All right, so when I am basting, I like to use these clips. They are called Kwik clips. And I have separated them into these two different jars of colors, but when you order them, you end up getting all of those little plastic bits mixed together, and it's just a combination of these colors. There's like 6 different colors, but I like to separate them out into jars because I find it easier to go through and make sure that they will stand out against the quilt that I'm doing. So if I'm doing primarily pinks and purples in my quilt, then I don't want to use this bottle of them. I'd rather use this bottle. This particular quilt, I don't think it's going to make too big of an issue, so I'm with, choosing either one. I'm going to go with this because I do see some red up here. So, and the way that these work is you get the bag with just those little plastic bits in them. And I will show you these up closer a little bit later on. But then you go through and you have to order the pins themselves separately, and you attach them all. And it's really not that difficult. You just use a pair of needle nose pliers and go and like crimp it down into place. And it takes a while because there's a lot of them, but it's not so bad. I'm trying to remember if those little plastic pieces came with 100 or 200 in a bag. I honestly can't remember because it's been a while since I bought them. But they work together with this, which is the Kwik clip tool. And sadly, I don't think that the company is going to continue making them. When I bought them maybe a year or two ago, it looked like they were kind of going out of business. I think you can still find them. It's just that they're pretty much selling off their stock as far as if you're getting it from the company itself. So I like to start in the middle with my first one, and then I will work my way outwards. So the next one I'm going to do is going to be right here, and you're just going to poke it down into your quilt. And these are the bent clips, so it comes right back up easily when you stick it in there. And then you're going to use this little tool to catch the edge of it. And I'm going to zoom you in so that you can see this more clearly and really understand what I'm talking about. All right, so I changed your angle as well because I really want you to be able to see this well. Now, what I typically do is I will take the clip in my dominant hand and I will get it down into place. And you're just going to poke it straight down and then lift it back up. And because these are bent clips, they pop back up easily and you're not really fighting with it. So next I take the tool and I'm just going to hook the edge of the bar of the pin into one of these grooves. It does not matter which groove it is. They've got several of them there just so that it's easy to snag one of them. And that's it. It easily goes in, opens and closes with that tool. And let me tell you, this saves my fingers so much when I'm going through and basting a quilt, because it used to be I get done and my fingers would be so sore from the little bars, having to close all of those little bars on the clips. All right. Now you see how to do that. I'm going to zoom you back out so that you can watch my process and how I go through the quilt. Actually, real quick before we continue further, I just wanted to show you what these clips look like with the little plastic piece on them. And like I said, you buy the bag of plastic pieces and then you buy the clips separate. And you take a pair of needle nose pliers and you just crimp it right into place. And it's super easy, very quick. It just takes a while because there's a lot of them to do when you buy a package of them. So I like to sit in front of the TV if I'm, or I say that like it's something that I have done multiple times. I've done it twice because I got 2 bags of the clips. But that is what I did with it, is I just sat down in front of the TV and I put them all together. All right, let's go ahead and baste the rest of this quilt. All right, so I've got a whole bunch of these open and ready to go. I'm just going to go through and space them out. I like to do them maybe about 10 inches apart, maybe 12 inches, something around that. But it also is going to depend on what you're comfortable with. Now that I've gotten them going across, I'm going to go back through. I'm going to do the same thing again, but I'm going to kind of stair step these. So instead of doing it directly above, this time I'm going to go to the side. I'm going to go in between these two and out. And I'm just going to do this and all the way across. Now, you will find sometimes that you'll end up getting a little bit off center, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're really just trying to hold our layers together well enough that nothing shifts when we go to quilt it. And if you have it spaced out about like this, you can usually guarantee that you're not going to have any kind of issue with that. Now, as I go, I'm just going to kind of roll this up and tug at the edge and roll out my pool noodles. And then I'm going to continue on the same way. Again, I'm coming in between these two and coming up here. Now you do want to make sure that you are catching that back layer of quilt, your quilt backing. I don't know that I caught it on that one, so I'm just going to kind of dig it down until I feel my mat on the point of that pin. You can always do that if you need to. There's a very distinct difference in the feel when you're just going through layers and when you touch your mat with the sharp point of your pin. And there are other ways to baste a quilt besides just this. Even if you want to use the pool noodle basting, you can still use other methods. For example, a lot of people like to use the spray baste. And there's nothing wrong with that. It works really well for a lot of people. I don't personally like to use that. One, because I just have no experience with it. But two, I just don't like having to use extra chemicals on things if I can get around it. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just smoothing all of this out. You just want to make sure you don't have any rolls or lumps in your quilt. So you want it to be smooth all the way through to the back as well. You can kind of feel if you get a fold in your back. But I will say that doing the pool noodle basting helps so much with making sure that you are not getting lumpiness on your back and that everything is laid out nice. So I'm just going to go through and open up a few more of these clips so that I can do another couple rows. So different ways that you can baste besides this. There's the spray baste. There's also a powder baste. And I think that's activated with the iron. It's basically you would pull back the layers, and as you go, you would sprinkle some of that powder in there. And like I said, I think you activate that with the iron. Again, I haven't used that kind though, so I can't tell you how well it works or anything like that. But again, it kind of comes down to it's a chemical, and I prefer, I don't know, sometimes the old ways are just the good ways. And I feel like the pin basting is a good old method with a little bit of an update with these little plastic quick clip pieces that I've added. So other methods, there is even older methods than clips would be if you were using tailor tacks. And tailor tacks are basically where you take a very small amount of thread and you're just tacking it down into places very similar to how I'm doing with the clips, except for you're doing a loop of thread there. And those are also used with clothing as well. A lot of people will use tailor tacks to mark certain things from their pattern onto their garments when they're constructing them. Like, for example, where to do buttonholes or where certain things need to go. I typically don't use tailor tacks for anything really. It just seems like extra hand sewing that I don't feel like doing. Go figure. I like to do cross stitch, but I don't like just regular hand sewing. To me, I don't know. I just don't enjoy doing plain hand sewing, which seems so strange considering the fact that I like cross stitch. But I guess it's just two different things. It's like the difference between somebody making clothing and someone doing alterations to clothing. It's two different skills. It's two different things entirely. So, and that is what I always tell people when they ask me to do alterations on their clothing. Now, I did just change this clip out for a different one, and the reason why is because I kind of felt like the blue might disappear into this fabric. I feel like the green stands out just a little bit more. And I will do that as I'm going along. If I see something looks like it's going to blend in, I will reach for a different clip. And that is definitely something that's nice about these as well, is when you're just using the clips themselves, they really can disappear into a quilt quite easily. Whereas when you have them colored with all these different color options, you can easily change out what one you want to use where over the top of which fabric on the quilt and make sure that they stand out a bit better. I am going to film the entire process of me going through and pin basting this. And the reason why is because I want you to see how quickly this goes. A lot of times, pin basting gets a bad reputation for taking a long time to do. And if you are doing that, I would say if you're doing it without the pool noodles, then yes, certainly it will take you longer. But using the pool noodles will speed up your time significantly. And yes, there is time involved for getting them rolled onto the pool noodles, but it's really not bad. You're going to have to iron your fabric and lay it all out anyways. And I really find this to be the easiest way to do that and make sure that everything is nice and flat. And I mean, the thing is that I have a confined area that I can work on. I'm using the kitchen table, and I don't want to baste my quilts on the floor. I know some people will do that, and if that's what you've got to do, that's what you got to do. There's nothing wrong with it. But I don't want to do that with mine, and I feel more comfortable using my kitchen table. So that's one reason why it's nice to do the pool noodle basting, is that I don't need quite as much room to do it. In some ways I do, because I need the length, but for the width, I can do it on a fairly confined space like a kitchen table. So it's a really good space saver. If you figure when you are doing it all laid out open on the floor or wherever you're doing it, if you're not using the pool noodle basting, then you have to have everything laying flat all the way across and all the way, width and height wise. And that takes a lot of room. It's going to take as much space as the size of your quilt, and then a little bit in addition to it, because your batting and your backing are going to be longer. Whereas doing it this way, this takes maybe 3 feet in height, and then the width of the pool noodles. And that's all I need. So I'll pull this a little bit further. Now, I do use the chairs on the opposite side of the table to help keep my pool noodles from rolling off the table. And I think that's a very important tip, because if you move all your chairs away from the table to try to give yourself more space, then you end up with your pool noodles rolling right off the table. And then you're going to be chasing them. And I heard a baby crying, but it seemed short, so I think she's okay. It sounded more like she just got upset. Something got taken from her or something. If I hear it again, I'm going to be running out there, though, just to make sure. So I might have to take a brief moment, but right now I think it's okay. The kids are all outside playing with the water hose and sprinklers and stuff, all their water toys. It has been so hot here lately. And yesterday it was 100 degrees. It's crazy. So hot. It's like Florida weather. If you're in Florida, you know what I'm talking about. Actually, our relatives who live in Florida were telling us that they had our weather down there. So it was actually hotter here than it was for them, which is just crazy. But that's okay. I told them send our weather back. We like the cooler weather. Send it back. It's ours. So, but yes, the kids have been wanting to play outside in the water, and I figured with how hot it's been, it is a good time to let them do that. Now, right now, I'm at the end of my quilt already, and I'm just pulling out the pins that I've got holding it into the pool noodle. And I just use these little glass head pins to do that. I think these ones are from Dritz. And you can get a small box of them like this for, I don't remember exactly. It's less than $10 though. And you can get them from Fat Quarter Shop and basically any quilt store, really. Even some craft stores, I think, have them too. So, but they're good to have on hand. And this is one of the ways that I use them. We also will use those same types of pins though for digging out splinters or whatever if we need to, or for resetting games that have impossibly small reset areas that you need to use a pin in order to reach. I've got a little bit of a bubble that I'm feeling here, so I'm just feeling it from underneath to make sure that's not actually transferring to, I'm going to pull this one out just to make sure that's laying perfectly flat there. And I'll put that back in. Let's actually put one in right here, and then I'll put one over there. All right, there we go. That is that portion finished. Now I just need to trim this excess off, and I'll show you how to do that. All right, so we've got all of this pin basted. Now we just want to remove this excess batting and backing fabric. And I always baste with a cutting mat underneath. That way, when I get to this step, I can just line it up and make sure everything's on the cutting mat and trim away the excess. Now, this doesn't have to be perfect. You can see I'm very wobbly here, but you want to leave a little bit of extra because as you quilt things, it tends to shrink up, and there have been cases where, different fabrics, different pieces of the quilt might shrink at a greater rate. For example, the quilt top. You don't want the quilt top to shrink at a greater rate than your backing or your batting. So we always cut our batting and our backing larger than our front. That way, if we have to trim things, we will have to trim things up at the end. And we can do that without losing any of our quilt top. Again, like I said, it does not have to be perfect. I just and wanting to get it cut and trimmed down so that it's easier to handle and to maneuver on my machine. And there we go. Now I can take this extra batting and remove it from the roll. And I can use this, either Frankenstein it together and make a larger piece of batting to use on another quilt, or I can save it to use for a table runner or a bed runner or placemat, some smaller project, or I can cut it down and use it on project bags as well. This will be plenty enough on here to make quite a few project bags. But for now, I will probably save it in case I need to make a table runner with it. And I'm just going to temporarily roll this up until I can get it properly folded. But I'm going to do that after I have dealt with my excess batting and my excess backing fabrics. Now, what to do with your excess backing fabric? You can just pull this apart and use it in your stash. You can cut it down into smaller pieces like 2.5-inch strips or 5-inch pieces like charm packs. This is large enough that I could even cut it into 10-inch squares and make my own pieces for a layer cake. And if you do this every time you've got excess fabric from a project, it won't be long before you end up having your own homemade pre-cuts. And I'm talking about full pre-cuts, like full packs. I've got quite a few rolls of 2.5-inch strips that I have done this with. But of course, there's always the option that you could just fold this up and add it to your stash as well. All right, I hope this was helpful. And if you have any other questions, just let me know. I'd be happy to answer them and do a video if necessary. If you want me to explain anything more in depth, I'm happy to do that as well. I may end up putting out a video, just a very short one, with just the process of attaching the clips, the Kwik clips, to the quilt, just so that you guys see exactly how that tool works and you can reference that video quickly if you need to. All right. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Oh, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. I'll see you later. Bye.